Good evening. Good evening, y'all. I am Dorothy Burton, your host this evening. I hope everybody had a good day. Let me see who I can say hello to. Hi, Susie. I'm so glad you're here. Hey, Renee. I love y'all. Looking forward to tonight. Oh my God, we have so much to talk about. We have a lot to talk about. I think we have a lot to talk about that people don't realize what's going on in public schools. But anyway, I'm Dorothy Burton and your host. And what I do on Tuesday nights is we look at the truth behind the news. And this past week, last week we looked at the Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett race. And then two things came up. One was the announcement by our governor that he's all but mandating chapters of the Turning Point USA organization in high schools, and all but dared people to, if you have an objection to it, he said, TEA is going to be enforcing this. So I guess what, you get reported to TEA if you don't comply. And then the tragic shooting in Australia with the celebration of Hanukkah, and 15 of our Jewish brothers and sisters were killed. Brown University, two outstanding, from what I can tell, young students. And then the horrific death of the Reiners. Y'all, we are living in some treacherous times. We lived in times that we have never lived in before. And we need leadership like we've never needed leadership before. So all of that was going on. Oh, and I have to tell y'all this. I read where our governor, and I think I mentioned this last week or two, that he is determined to turn Houston, Harris County red. And this morning I read in San Antonio paper that he has a war chest of $90 million. And he said that he's going to spend that $90 million on two things, turning not only Harris County red, but deep red or dark red. I think that was what he said. And then he's going to use the rest of the money to go after voters who have not participated who have not voted. They're registered, most of them, but they haven't voted. And if I did a Substack this past week and it made some people mad, the truth has a way of making people mad, right? And he is going after. And then I watched today, I read that article today about the governors with this $90 million to turn Harris County dark red. And he's going to make it a point to go after, he said two things, to do that, to turn it red, and go after voters who have not voted. And then I watched, not 30 minutes later, an interview with Jasmine Crockett on a national podcast. And she said the very same thing that the governor said, that she's going to be going after, and I think we talked about this last week, that she's going to be going after voters who have not participated in the process. So we will see who's going to be successful in getting those voters, but that's going to be the key. So all this is going on. I've not been as active on Facebook as I had been, y'all, because I'm phasing out Facebook. I've already phased out TikTok. I've phased out Instagram. And YouTube principally is going to be my channel, I believe this is where the Lord is leading me, although, I'm getting used to this. It's not hard. And also the Leadership Collective, the Civics Leadership Collective. And I'm going to leave a link to that in the comments. And it is an organization of Christ followers in public service that I founded back in 2014. A group of us, elected leaders, local elected leaders. And we just do things and see things a little bit differently, biblically, not religiously, but biblically, and standing on principles and kingdom principles and learning that way, leading that way, all of that. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time with that. I'm going to be spending a lot of time here, but I am going to be phasing out Facebook. I've already phased out Instagram. I've already phased out TikTok. Okay. So with all the things that's going on, I got a text from a good friend of mine, a long text, and he was ranting about this plan of the governor to put turning Point USA chapters in schools. And I noticed that a lot of people were kind of upset about that, mad about that. But y'all, that's not the real news. I'm going to go through a funnel, and I'm going to start with, and this is just not only impacting Texas public schools, but I'm going to be talking tonight about the truth behind the news when it comes to public school education in America, and where it is and where we're going, and where we are being taken. And a lot of people are just not aware of what's going on. They read the headlines, but we're going to go behind the headlines, and I'm going to tell you what's driving this. And it has generational impacts. So first of all, let me start here. I am going to take a point so I can find it. A point of personal privilege right here. Y'all, I wrote this devotional. It's a 21-day devotional for the title of it is Still Standing, and 21-day devotional for leaders who refuse to quit. And when people see leaders, they typically think about people who are in public office or people who are heading corporations and things like that. But all of us are leaders in our areas of gifting in where God has placed us. And this devotional was written for you, for me, for those of us who are just living. And it is a great devotional, I think. Actually, I wrote a book and I wrote a devotional. I thought I was going to release the book first, but the devotional was on my heart to do because we're going through so many things, and so many people are hurting, and so many people are just, they just don't know what to expect from one day to the next. And people are afraid. A lot of people have given up hope. So this devotional is for those who refuse to quit. And every day for 21 straight days, if you read this devotional, and they are very short scriptures and just life lessons, I think that you will be really prepared for 2026 and what the Lord has in store for you. So tonight, let's start with at the beginning. It's a lot to go through, y'all, because it's a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes, and a lot of stuff that has gone on behind the scenes, and a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that people are just not aware. And it would be shocking to people to see how all of this has come down and what the end game is. And it is a long end game, and it's very involved, and it's very intricate, and it's just not the headline of Turning Point USA chapters in schools. There's a lot more behind that. So first of all, let's start at the beginning. Let's start with what the goal is. And this is fundamentally the plan, and we're going to get into how that plan is being executed. But there's a 5-step plan of dismantling public schools. So let me back up. You have to know that there is a push, and has been a push actually since Brown versus the Board of Education, to dismantle public school systems. But for the first time in American history, all of the stars have aligned. And y'all know I don't believe in all that. I'm saying that hypothetically. I'm just saying that as an example, that all of the stars have aligned for the first time in American history, whereas there is a compliant president, a compliant Congress, a compliant corporate America. They have all aligned and are in sync. And as we get further into this program, you're going to see what I mean by that. But the goal is ultimately to replace public school systems across the country, not just here in Texas. And it is a coordinated effort. So how are they going to do that? And we have seen that. First of all, you have to starve schools of funding. Now, we have seen that here in Texas, reducing funding for public schools through, tax changes in budget, and underfunding schools while placing increasing mandates on schools to do more with less. And of course, it's going to destabilize them. And then to create resource scarcity, meaning that if the money isn't there, that's going to weaken the opportunity for these schools to perform. And when schools don't perform, what does that do? That weakens the trust of parents, of the community in the schools. But what they don't see is the starvation of reducing the funding, underfunding the schools. And when you reduce the funding, when you underfund the schools, it creates a resource scarcity. And when there's a resource scarcity, it weakens performance. And when performance is weakened, it weakens trust. Oh, see, those public schools ain't about nothing. Oh, those public schools are horrible. Oh, those public schools are rotten. But there's a reason for that. And then the second step is the destabilization. Because once you starve schools or reduce the funding of school systems, of course it's going to destabilize them. So what happens when schools become destabilized because they have been starved of funding um, by legislatures? And I keep emphasizing it's just not Texas legislatures. This is all over the country. And when we get further into this, I'm going to show you why and how this is a coordinated effort. So once the funding isn't there, of course the schools are going to be destabilized. And once schools become destabilized, they start to fail. And once they start to fail, that gets highlighted all over the news. But what doesn't get highlighted is they're failing because they're underfunded. And then under this destabilization is the increase in scrutiny. The ratings, how schools are rated, the ratings fall, public criticism increases. And then what does that do? That erodes the confidence in local leadership. Local school board members get challenged for their seats. It erodes the confidence in local school boards and governance. And why is that important? Because see, if you can starve them and destabilize them, and then you said, oh God, look at all these failed schools. Then of course you're going to look at the school board, and what does that do? That gives opportunity for candidates funded by these organizations that we're going to get into later to file for these seats, run for these seats, and win. But it goes back to starving of funding. And once that happens, the funding, the destabilization, and then you have candidates fielded against these school board members, and the public loses confidence in the schools because they have become so disabled, then that's when you see the opportunity for the state to come in and take over school districts. And you've seen that. It's a long list of them. Houston, as a matter of fact, Lake Worth, I think is the latest one. It's a long list of them. Schools closing, the state coming in and taking over schools, but it goes back to that number one, that starving, and then the destabilization to lessen the confidence in public schools. And the takeover, once 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 schools are starved of funding, and the public loses confidence, and then the increased scrutiny, and then the lost in ratings, and then the takeover, it's like, okay, the state has to intervene now. The state has to intervene and take over these schools because these schools are just not performing. And what does that do? That takes away local control and puts in state appointed managers. We've seen that in Houston with Mike Miles. Mike Miles used to be in Dallas in DISD. That's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing in Houston, and that's what we're seeing with this long list of school districts that we're seeing. And I promise you, this is not only just happening in Texas. So you get these state appointed managers coming in to manage the schools, to run the schools. And what does that do? That centralizes power in Austin, and it takes away power from the communities, and it takes away powers from the parents. And I would love for parents to understand what is going on here with these taking over the schools and all of this, because what it does, it takes away their power too. It takes away parental power, and it takes away power from communities. And then once they take over, when states get to intervene, the fourth step is the reshaping of the curriculum. Hello, y'all. The reshaping of the curriculum, but that's not the end game. The reshaping of the curriculum, the staffing, they get to bring in their staff. Of course, staff is going to leave. And then they get to hire staff. And then they get to implement new governance structures. And then they insert ideological, partisan, religious curriculum or influence. Because they've taken over because of the destabilization, because of the starvation. And then the last and final step, you're going through the starvation, taking away the decrease in the funding, which leads to destabilization, which leads to the eroding of confidence in local leadership, which leads to then the takeover by the state. They put in these managers, right? Like Mike Miles, they did in Houston. And then the reshaping. That is the curriculum. That is the curriculum. Once they're able to do that, and once they're able to insert their own curriculum and redefine what success looks like, because see, that is a part of it too. Once the state takes over, once the school system is destabilized, all that, they get to redefine what success is. They get to redefine what civics mean. They get to redefine the ideological, philosophical influence of those schools. And you can just about guarantee that it's going to be a religious influence. It's going to be a partisan influence. And then the last part, and that's not the worst part. The worst part is the replacement. Replacement. And what do I mean by that? In the replacement phase, which is the last phase, that is redirecting funds to private religious schools via vouchers. Oh, we got to get these kids out of here. So they redirect the funds. And then what happens? Privatization becomes what? Normal. It becomes normal. The normalization of privatization as choice. So what does that do? It permanently, in the replay stage, it permanently weakens the public education system until it falls. I'm going to go back over that again. First is starvation, destabilization, the takeover, the reshaping, and then the replacement. And the replacement, y'all, is the ultimate goal. Yeah, ain't a pretty picture. And that's not only Texas. As I said, it's not only Texas, but it's all over the country. And how do they implement it all over the country? I'm going to show you. Let's see. I put this in the form of a funnel. And y'all, I know I got some school teachers on here tonight, so I'm trying to be like a school teacher tonight and put these up on the board so we can talk through them. So how do these 5 steps come about? Well, it begins with the 7 mountain dominionism, and that is the highest, that is at the top of the list. Because the people who are in control, who have taken over control of the legislatures, who have taken control over the state legislatures, certainly in Texas and these red states and growing across the country, they believe they have a mandate from God to oversee the 7 areas of society. Let me put this up here because I know I had to put it up there. And I'm going to come back to that. But y'all, this is the funnel. And what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going from the top down, because what we are hearing and seeing and reading on the headlines is the bottom up. The most important part, well, it's very important, very, very important, but it's the end game. The Turning Point USA chapters, what you've been hearing about, the headlines and all that, that's at the bottom of the funnel. I'm going to start at the top of the funnel, and then we're going to work down so you can understand how these legislatures in these states are now positioned to put these Turning Point USA chapters in high schools across the country. And by the time we get to the bottom of the funnel, you're going to understand why. Because it's not what you think. It's not what's been presented. Oh, we want to have these schools. We want to have these chapters. So, we can teach, civics and all this, American pride and all this kind of stuff. But that's the bottom of the funnel, y'all. We're going to start at the top of the funnel. We're going to talk about the 7 mountain dominionism, and then we're going to talk about ALEC. If you've heard of ALEC, raise your hand, holler at me in the comments. And y'all, once we get to the end of this, and I want you to be making comments along the way, because I'm going to get to your comments, but I also want to get through this presentation because this is so very important, because people really, 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 really don't understand what is going on here. Now, if y'all have been with me for a while, like Susie and Renee, months and months ago, y'all, we laid out these vouchers. We laid out the Bluebonnet curriculum. We laid out all of these things that was happening. And now that we're here, it's like people are going, well, how did we get here? We're going to talk about it. And that Alec, oh my God, it's almost sinful the way this is happening, the way this is going down, because the American people, for the most part, just have no idea. So we're going to start at the top of the funnel, and the top of the funnel is spiritual. That's why y'all, the Democrats will be making a terrible mistake if they totally dismiss religion and things of God, because this is just not political on the Republicans' end, on the conservative end. And I tell you, I know what I'm talking about. I mean, I used to be one of them. And those who know me know my history. I was a died in the war Republican from 1978 to 2018. When I tell you died in the war, my friends, my Democrat friends couldn't stand me. Well, they were my friends, but Black Democrats hated me in Dallas County because I just wasn't one of them. I mean, I gave Obama hell because I was a Republican. Okay, I always been. Okay. And I also taught Seven Mountain Dominionism because I really believed it, because I was so deeply steeped in evangelicalism. And the Lord saved me from that. And I had to start over, because everything I knew, everything I did was the Republican Party and evangelicalism. And I had a very lucrative life. I was a great speaker because I could teach. Oh God. Theologically trained, and I knew what I was talking about in government, and I was Black, and I was saying all the right things until God convicted me in that hotel room one day in Lubbock, Texas. And he go, when he turned his face from me, I knew I had to make a change. So when I talk about these things, it's just not something that I read. It's something that I know. It's something that I've lived. It's something that I've taught myself. I'm not proud of it, but God uses all things for his good, for good, doesn't he? So we're going to talk about the spiritual part of it, because this is a lot of what's driving this, because they really believe that they have a mandate from God. And then we're going to talk about ALEC, and then we're going to talk about AFPI, and we're going to talk about American 250 Coalition, and then we're going to get to Turning Point USA. And people who aren't paying attention to this, parents who aren't paying attention to this, teachers who aren't paying attention to this, teachers unions who aren't paying attention to this, taxpayers who aren't paying attention to this. I know it's boring. It isn't exciting stuff, but it is the foundation of America. When we talk about education in public schools and generations to come, and we are right in the thick of it right now. And I know this doesn't make for sexy talk. I know it doesn't make for a sexy topic, but it was something that the Lord has given me to do, because people need to know what's going on with our public schools and what's going on with our kids, and why it's going on. Now, you have to know that America, by the year 2040, and all of this is connected, by the year 2040 and the year 2045, it's projected that America will be majority minority. There are already the majority of kids in America are not white kids. They are Black and brown kids. That happened back in 2019, 2020. So all of this stuff is tied together. And what's tying it together is the spiritual, but also it's the preservation of the slippage of white majority and white majority kids in public schools in America, really. So we're going to start there. I'm going to make it as simple as I can, because it's very involved. But we're going to get through it. So let's start with that Seven Mountain Dominionism. I know that most of you have heard of that, but Seven Mountain Dominionism is a belief by conservative right-wing Christians that they have been called to dominate all seven spheres of society. And I know y'all have heard about that. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. But this is the driver spiritually behind this. And when people believe that they have a mandate from God and not just acting as government officials and not just acting as representatives, but when they really believe that they're doing God's work and this is what God would have them to do, it's very difficult to change a mind and a heart to say, no, that's not true. But you will see this now, not only if you think about the 7 mountains, the 7 fears, and this is what I used to teach. If you look at every area of society, it's divided up into 7 spheres: education, government, media, business, family, arts and entertainment, and religion. And if you think about it, you will see where not only education, but government, media, the Kennedy Center now is what the Trump Center. Business, you see how these corporations are bending the knee to Trump and this right-wing agenda. Family was already a given. And then arts and entertainment, and of course, religion. The key number one is what we're talking about tonight, is education. Why? Because education is viewed as shaping the future for future generations. Hence, these Turning Point USA chapters now being mandated on these high school campuses, and we're going to get to that. But out of the seven, education is the most important to these people. Why? Because it determines the future. So, going back to this, after 7 mountains, after having believed, okay, we have this mandate from God to do this. How are we going to do this? Now, keep in mind, y'all, this just didn't come up. This has been literally, and I'm going to say literally, since Brown versus the Board of Education. But as I said, now all the stars are aligned. And ALEC is an organization that I'm pretty sure that the majority of the people have not heard of, but it is the most important, influential influence behind what we're seeing today in the dismantling of public schools. Well, how is that? Well, let me tell you what ALEC is, if you have not heard of it, and it should scare you to death. Let me see if this is the right one. Yes. ALEC stands for the American Legislative Exchange Council. And this is the witch's brew. This is where private organizations, first of all, let me say this. ALEC is not a government body. It's a private policy organization. And see, a lot of people were focused, and rightly so, on Project 2025. And all of this, y'all, and all of the players are in the same atmosphere. And they are on one accord. So while people have heard of, the all of these other things like Project 25 and all of that, ALEC flies under the radar. Very few people have heard of the American Legislative Exchange Council. It is a private policy organization that brings together 2 very powerful groups: conservative state legislators, not just from Texas, but all over the country. Conservative state legislators and corporate and ideological interests, the business people, the money people, the oligarchs. And what happens is this: these conservative state legislators and these corporate and ideological interest people, the oligarchs, the money people, the billionaires, the corporate presidents, they get together and they write what's called model legislation that lawmakers introduce when they go back to their own states. And it's often word for word. So you're saying, where does these bills come from? And where does all this come from? It originates with ALEC. And that's the key. ALEC doesn't just advocate for ideas. It actually pre-writes laws. You hear me? It pre-writes laws. And so this is how it works. ALEC task forces, they draft these model bills behind closed doors, private, ultra private. consisting of conservative state legislators and these rich billionaire corporate chairmen and corporate owners and people like that. Corporate members and ideological groups with these conservative state legislators, they get together and they help shape the language of bills. The state legislators, the conservative state legislators who are members of ALEC, then they go back and take those bills back to their home states, to their state legislatures. And then those bills are introduced in multiple states with the same language. And that's why you're hearing when you hear it happening in Texas, and then you hear it happening in Nebraska, and then you hear it happening in Iowa. It likely originated with ALEC, with the American Legislative Exchange Council. You will never hear about it in the news, hardly. You will never hear about people talking about it. So once these conservative state legislators who are members of ALEC and these corporate billionaire types and these ideologues get together and they pre-write these bills, and then those state legislators who are members of ALEC, they take it back to the rest of their state legislators, and then they put these bills out there to be passed. And that's why you're seeing, and I said before, that's why you see these same policies popping up across states at the same time. Y'all, that's not coincidence. That's coordination down to the T. Now, so how does ALEC impact public education? Well, I'm glad you asked. See, ALEC has been involved. And when I tell you some of these things, ALEC has been involved for years. Somebody say out to me, for years. We can track it back to I keep hating to say it, but back to Brown. That's how long this has been going forward. But as I said, only now I have all the stars aligned. And they are in hog heaven because of all this stuff that they've been writing for all these years and all these things that they've been wanting. Now it's finally come together. And when I tell you how ALEC has impacted public education, you're going to go, oh, that's why that was that way. Oh, that's why that happened. Let me tell you what ALEC was behind. ALEC was behind the expansion of school vouchers. Sounds familiar? And school choice. Keep in mind, and I'm keeping this slide up there because I want you to understand who and what ALEC is. They have been behind the expansion of school vouchers and school choice. Keep in mind, it's these corporate billionaires and these state legislators who are members of this super, super, super secret organization that meets and pre-writes these bills. The second thing they have impacted is school teachers unions. They have effectively weakened Texas. I mean, not Texas, because it's all over the country. They have effectively weakened teachers unions. So they are behind vouchers. They're behind school choice. They're behind the weakening of teacher unions. Anybody care to guess what the fourth one is? Reduce public school funding. They're behind that. The reduction of public school funding. And then the privatization and the expansion of charter schools. See, when we started talking about this thing back in the fall, and it's like, okay, see, I just read a bunch of random stuff. I mean, because if stuff don't make sense to me, I'm going to go and try to find out and make it make sense. And if I can't make it make sense, it's going to worry me. So when we started talking about these things like the Blue Bonnet curriculum and why Greg Abbott was so hell-bent, and when he put that woman in there under the woman that had gotten elected, why was he so hell-bent on that? Why are they so hell-bent on privatization and school choice? Well, it's part of ALEC. It's part of the plan. It's part of the plan. As a matter of fact, there's like 6 things. The school vouchers, school choice, weakening teachers unions, the reduction in public school funding, promoting privatization and charter school expansion. This stuff just didn't happen by accident. And it just didn't happen. It's a coordinated effort. And if y'all think about it, especially my teacher friends, if y'all think about it, if you think about the charter school expansion, how it seemed as though it was just all of a sudden an explosion of these charter school expansion. It wasn't all of a sudden. It's coordinated and it's very well planned by ALEC, by these conservative state legislators and these very rich corporate billionaires who comprise this private, ultra private organization that's pulling the strings on public schools and public schools funding, education, teachers unions, and all that. And then the fifth thing, you can just by guess that, is DEI. Limit DEI, and not only DEI, but curriculum content. That's why you're seeing all over the country, again, when they pre-write these bills, when they meet to pre-write these bills and send them back via the conservative state legislators who are part of this group, and when they send them back to their state legislatures, they're all going to read the same. So it is no accident that the limiting DEI and the curriculum content, you heard all of a sudden, it's like everybody was talking about curriculum, right? Everybody was talking about curriculum. It's part of it. It's part of it. And then the last thing, and that's why I'm telling y'all, all the stars have aligned, because everything ALEC has worked on now is either law, or it's going to be law, or it is a reality, like the weakening of the teachers union. And the last thing is strengthening state control over local school districts. Hello, somebody. Hello out there. If you're out there. And that was the last thing. The last piece of the puzzle. And we're seeing that all over Texas, and we're seeing it all over the country. Many of the laws that we're talking about in Texas, many of the laws that we're talking about in these other states mirror exactly ALEC model legislation, or is ideologically aligned with it. Again, that's not by accident. Expansion of school vouchers and school choice, weakening teachers unions, reducing public school funding, promoting privatization and the expansion of charter schools, limiting DEI, and changing the curriculum content, strengthening state control over local school districts. They batten 100. And what people fuss about is these Turning Point USA. That ain't it, y'all. That's part of this. Like I said, that's at the bottom of the funnel. At the bottom. And this high, and I'm spending time on ALEC, this American Legislative Council, Exchange Council, because next to Project 2025, this thing right here, this council, made up of these state legislators and these wealthy ideologues and corporate people, is what's changing public school systems across the country. Turning Point USA influences students. America First policy, I think I see that. The America First policy institutes and frames the ideology. But it is ALEC that operationalizes it all into legislation. Hello, somebody. They occupy different lanes, but they run the same direction. And Lord, help me to connect the dots. So why does this matter? Like I said, I'm leaving ALEC up there. Why does this matter spiritually and civically? I'm going to tell you why. Because what this shows us, what I just explained to you, and how ALEC works, it shows that power in America today, y'all, we can, we talk about, I talked about the kakistocracy, and we talk about autocrat. Listen, but it shows one thing, the way ALEC works, it shows us one thing. It actually shows us a number of things, but if we're paying attention, it shows us this. It shows us that power today is quiet, is procedural, is legal, and is very, very well coordinated. Scripture warns us about this. It warns us about systems that move in darkness while appearing orderly That's what we're dealing with. And so it goes back to what if you watch my video this morning, we're not, our fight is not against flesh and blood. It's against principalities. It's, y'all, it's spiritual. It's spiritual. All this, what I'm talking about, this Alec, it's rooted in that seven mountain dominionism that I talked about, that I used to teach, that really believe, that evangelicals really believe. But they just hadn't been in positions to implement it. But now, guess what? They are. So, yeah, that's where we are. So, let's get to the next one. On this funnel, let's talk about the. Let me see. Which one I want to go to next? This one, the America First Policy Institute. Now, like I said, I am going to methodically go through this tonight because it's just not the Turning Point USA, chapters. So this is where the ideas become law. This is where they are pre-written through ALEC. This is where, under the American First Policy Institute, is the coordination of it. I don't know if you've heard of AFPI, but it's upstream. It's not flashy. It sets directions. It sets directions, not headlines. You're not going to read about the America First Policy Institute in headlines. But what it does, it connects belief to policy priorities. It connects beliefs to policy priorities. And I have highlighted in the middle the core of what it does. It provides research and training and guidance to who? Y'all, to these lawmakers and their staff. That's why if you're in Texas, the billionaire, the West Texas billionaires, and like I said at the beginning, that Greg Abbott bragging about his $90 million war chest. Yeah. That's what it's for. Yeah. It connects the belief to who? To the policymakers, to the lawmakers, providing guidance from them. Yeah. So between ALEC, between AFPI, what in the world, Dorothy, is next? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we're going to get to what's next. And I want us to keep in mind the funnel. We've gone down from the seven mountain dominionism, from the mandate from on high from God, to ALEC, to the super private organization that's comprised of these state legislators, and these billionaire corporate chairman people, ideologues, who pre-write these bills. And they have principally, as we went through these 7 points, expanding school vouchers and all that, weakening the teachers unions and all that. And so now we are to America 250 Coalition. What in the world, Dorothy, is that? Well, I'm fixing to tell you. Let me get to it. America 250, Civics Education Coalition. And this is the national coordination and legitimacy layer. And I have highlighted, y'all, who comprises this America 250. And why America 250? Because it's celebrating the 250th birthday of America. Its partners. We're getting closer to the end of the funnel. Its partners include Turning Point USA, Hillsdale, Heritage Foundation, PragerU, Moms for Liberty, ALEC, and others. And what do they focus on? They are focused on redefining civics, patriotism, and American history. As you see Donald Trump, and you see universities, and you see schools capitulating to the rewriting of history. That's just not by accident, and it's not by coincidence. It's by coordination, as I just went through with ALEC, as we just went through with AFPI. It's coordinated. And so this America 250 is the national framework adopted by the people that we just talked about, these conservative state legislators and these ultra conservative billionaire corporate people who comprise ALEC. ALEC is really the heart of this. It's really the heart of it, because it is the secret organization that these state legislators belong to, along with these ideologues and these billionaire corporation types who meet secretly, privately, and rewrite these bills. And write these bills that they take back to their state houses and state legislators. That's how it works, y'all. That's how it works. That is how it works. So now we get to the bottom of the funnel, which is this. Let me go back to this, because I want to keep this top of mind for y'all. The funnel. The funnel. See, all of the headlines have been on Turning Point USA and the chapters that the governor and lieutenant governor has pledged $1 million. So all of the angst and all of the anger and all of the rage has been against that. But y'all, the truth behind the news, the truth behind that is what I just showed y'all. The funnel. Turning Point USA, these chapters are a result of, and the icing on the cake of, the cake that's already been baked by ALEC and AFPI in America 250, which has positioned now the opportunity. Since, let me go back to this, because see, I want y'all to get it. It's all coordinated. So once public schools have been dismantled by going through the steps that I just took y'all through, ALEC and its goals, those 6 goals, AFPI, America 250, now it's to the point where it is number 5, and that is replacing, which is the ultimate goal. How is that? And how does Turning Point USA in these chapters figure into it? Well, I'm glad you asked. So because that is the bottom of the tunnel. The funnel. And that very last one that I have highlighted. And see, I tried to make this plain. We had a show with Calvin and my good friend Irish. And I tried to make it really clear that where African Americans, Black and Browns, and these organizations and Democrats are missing the boat. As a matter of fact, they're not missing the boat. They have missed the boat. Because I just showed y'all how well coordinated this thing is. Now, what we're seeing now with these chapters is the icing on the cake. All the other stuff has already been done. All that other stuff is baked in the cake. Okay. So when Abbott came out and said that they were going to have these chapters all over Texas, and watch, it's just not going to be Texas, and how confident he was in it, calling the press conference with the president, I think, of Turning Point USA, and then our lieutenant governor, so confident, and he's gonna contribute $1 million. Y'all know why? Because it's the icing on the cake. The cake has already been baked. It's baked in the cake. What I just explained to you. That's why they could be so confident, because ALEC has done its job. America First Policy Institute has done its job. The religious people through 7 Mountains, in making it acceptable to their evangelical churches and their church members, they have done their job. Who haven't done their job are the Democrats. Who haven't done their jobs are Black and brown parents and organizations who are going to be left behind. Because now, and like I said, I highlighted that one at the bottom, the very last one, because Turning Point USA serves as a long-term pipeline for sustaining ideology across generations. This stuff is generational. It's generational. Yeah. So this is why youth capture, when I say youth capture, getting young people involved in the process and teaching them, readying them to hand the baton off to. That's why we had that show last week before last. In Dallas County, you have people been in office, a generation, 40 years, 35. And me and Irish, we don't agree on this, but that's okay. I'm just telling you the way the world works. I'm just telling you the way the other side works. And they now have generational representation. Why do they have generational representation? Because all this stuff that I just told you, all this stuff is a coordinated, quiet, powerful power grab, and they have grabbed the power and they didn't tell nobody about it. And now they can come out and brag about these Turning Point USA chapters on all these campuses, because youth capture matters. Capturing the youth, whoever captures the youth captures the future. And I'm going to say it again. Whoever captures the youth captures the future, and whoever captures the future gets to determine the future. Hello, somebody. So while they are the minority population-wise, they have already extrapolated that out 20 years when America is going to change. We have a lot of black people, a lot of brown people. Oh, America's going to be majority minority. So because the work has been done 20 years hence, 20 years before. So when we get to 20 years out, so what? Because you haven't planned, you haven't included your youth, you haven't done what an ALEC and an AFPI and America 250. None of that. And y'all, power doesn't shout. It doesn't. It's very quiet. And it's very well coordinated. So now to continue with this, now is time. Now is time. Because the cake has been baked. The groundwork has been set. I don't have to go. I won't go through that list again. Yes, I am going to go through that list again, because that's what baked the cake for America public school systems. Expanding the school vouchers, the school choice, weakening teachers unions, reducing public school funding, promoting privatization and charter school expansion, limiting DEI, and controlling curriculum content, what's being taught, and then strengthening state control over local school districts. Hello, somebody. That's the final thing. So now that all that's been done, now it's time to put these chapters in. Because why? Because you're capturing the youth. Why? Because the youth is the future, and that's for generations to come. That's the long game, y'all. That's the long game. So don't, you can rant and rave about these chapters, but this is the end of a very long, sustained, private, quiet power grab. And so now it seems like every week you're hearing about a school being taken over. Every week a school is being closed. And why? I just told you. Yeah. That's how public schools have been dismantled and are being dismantled. What I just told you. So why is that? I put that at the end of the funnel. Let me find my funnel again. I tried to make a funnel, y'all, but I didn't know how to make a funnel. There we go. And guess what? While Turning Point USA, these chapters in these schools for generations to come, while the end goal, that's the bottom of the funnel. Guess what? The Bible tells us that generations come and generations go. So really, while it's at the bottom of the funnel, it's really the new beginning. Because these kids, It's part of Turning Point USA. And Turning Point USA is part of America 250. It's been long-standing, the part of ALEC and all of that. It's really a new beginning of what we have seen. It's really a new beginning starting back up to the Seven Mountain Dominionism, because the fastest growing religious group in America are young white evangelicals. The kind that Turning Point USA has recruited and is recruiting. Yeah. So that's the game plan. And that's why these chapters now in these schools, like I said, power is quiet and it's steady and it's methodical. And the method is that. That's the method. And I hope I have explained the means. And they line up. They line up. So that's it. That's the story of public education, not only in Texas, but what we're going to be seeing more and more around the country. Yeah. And Susie said West Texas, Tim Dunn, Wilkes Brothers billionaires. That y'all we've been hoodwinked. Teaching critical thinking and curriculum. Yeah, because they get to determine the curriculum, and critical thinking is not in line with religious ideology, with conservative religious ideology. So yeah, you're right. Think also about Abbott proposed eliminating property taxes. So, okay, if the primary funding of public schools is property taxes, it's like, yay, we don't have to pay no more property taxes. Now, we don't have a state income tax. So, property taxes are, that's bread and butter, especially for school districts. So if you take that away, where is the funding going to come from? You're right, Susie. It's not. Yeah, the Texas Public Policy Fund, yeah, but it's not on the scale. It's part of it, but it's not a major player in the it's not on the same scale, not by any means, with ALEC and but it's part of it. I'm telling you, y'all, this thing is so well coordinated. It's crazy and it's scary. And the scariest part of it is people are clueless for the most part. So said the benefits of education and of useful knowledge generally diffused through a community are essential to the preservation of a free government. Sam Houston, they don't want a free government at all. So I think I got everybody. Y'all, thank you for hanging in and for learning, and because what we see of public schools is not what is, and what is what I hopefully have explained to you what is and why it is, and that's where we are. That's where we are. It's sad. It makes me sad. But I want you guys to find out all you can about not AFPI, because they're pretty. Let me find it. Not that one. Yeah. I want y'all to look up and Google the American Legislative Exchange Council. You won't read about it in the newspaper. But it is the brainchild. It is why we're seeing what we're seeing today. And who'd have thunk it? That would be this secretive organization of state legislators and billionaires pre-writing bills. That's how you do it. Okay, y'all, that's all I got. And if the Lord says the same, let me see, remove that. Y'all got that? And if the Lord says the same, I will see y'all next week. But public education is in trouble, and it just is sad. It's sad what we've come to, and you know the train has long left the station. Now that they are free to put these chapters in these high schools, that's long been planned, and like I said, I hope that explaining it through the funnel, that was the best way that I could put in, that there's just so much information that the funnel was the best way that I could put it to make it make sense to you guys. This is where we are. And yeah, that's where we are. All right. Yeah. And you're gonna be hearing more and more of schools closing, more and more state taking over schools. And when you hear the news, think back to this podcast, because what you're hearing and you're seeing on the news, there's been a long, quiet, and coordinated and very powerful effort that has gone into that. And so that's where we are. Love y'all. Thank y'all so much for hanging with me. And I hope this has been a blessing to you as we continue to help you understand the truth behind the news, so that we can be better informed and better citizens, so that we can represent the kingdom better, so that we can represent our families better, so that we will know better. Because God said his people perish for lack of knowledge, and lack of knowledge, I say all the time, is ignorance, and ignorance is darkness. And he doesn't want us to be in the dark. And as long as y'all come on Tuesday, you're not gonna be in the dark. Because I'm gonna tell you, we're gonna talk about what we need. We're gonna talk about what we need. I don't care how many enemies I make. Truth has a way of doing that. But people need to know the truth, and people need to know what's going on. And that's what we do on Tuesday night. I wish I had gossip for you. No, I don't, because I'm not a gossiper. But I don't do gossip. I don't do none of that stuff, because the world is on fire. And we need some people with some fire extinguishers and not more fire starters. And I hope that's what we go to be. That's what I'm going to try to be. And y'all know I love you. I appreciate you so much. And as the Lord said the same, I will see you next time.